day, ladies and gentlemen. It is Thursday, January 11th, 2024. I'm here with my friend Mike Konnert, CEO of Vizsla Silver, VZLA on the venture, also VZLA and Oasis Amex. Vizsla, as I'm sure you know, because I've owned it and followed it for years, has been tremendously successful at their Panuco project in Mexico. They've been drilling the hell out of it for 2 years now. They just put out another resource update, and like earlier ones, it's an impressive increase. And I was particularly impressed, actually, by not just the growth in the resource, and it's getting quite large, over 300 million ton silver equivalent, but the fact they had a significant increase in the grade of the indicated resource. I mean, that's pretty impressive because with high grade systems, the truth of the matter is, as they get developed and drilled off, that's more often than not, that's not the way it goes. It quite often goes the other way when you infill drill. So it was really nice to see the grade actually come up to a very impressive average for the indicated material, and which gives us some comfort that the same thing's going to happen as they keep infill drilling and expanding indicated. But I'm going to get Mike to walk us through the new resource, and then we'll talk about what Vizsla's got planned for 2024. Take it away, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and great to see you again, and great to do a presentation with you here. I share that same excitement about the combination of an increase in scale and in ounces and grade. I'm trying to do two things at once here, and open this presentation and talk about the resource, but having the ounce count increase at the same time as an increase in overall grade is thrilling, and as you said, it's often a rare thing, and often it's a sign of tier one or a world-class project. And so we've modified our tagline here, and going forward here, we talk about the resource, but what we're doing is really exploring and de-risking the next world-class silver district here at Panuco, our project in Sinaloa, Mexico. Of course, I'll make forward-looking statements here, so it's a good disclosure for that. So our resource, and I think I should be able to annotate this here. So our resource came out as really surprised us. We knew we were making progress and making new discoveries. La Luisa was a new discovery we made last year that made itself into this. There, it became part of this resource here. And we started to see that growth, actually mostly driven by growth at the southern end of Napoleon. And when we noticed that the grade and the ounces were growing again, that was a major takeaway for us. But if we just compare back to January of last year, and we look at this as a year over year comparison, you can see the indicated ounces have increased, the inferred ounces have increased, the tons have increased, but also the grade here. And the gold grade is actually staying quite strong, as well as the silver grade increasing. So the indicated overall grade here, 511 grams per ton silver equivalent. In gold terms, that's just under 7 grams per ton gold equivalent, which is really incredible. Inferred, again, 433, 576, 5.76 grams per ton gold equivalent. So really nice grades here. Over 730,000 ounces of gold, and indicated 750,000 ounces of gold and inferred, 88,000 ounces of silver, 93 in indicated, 94 million ounces in inferred. Even if those were just on their own, that would be a major resource, of course, but combining the gold and the silver creates essentially a world-class scale of resource here. We saw a large increase in indicated tons. Inferred grew substantially, 69%. Both indicated and inferred silver equivalent ounces increased just under 50%. So in silver equivalent ounces and indicated 156 million ounces, in inferred 170 million ounces. In gold equivalent terms, it's about 2 million ounces in indicated and 2.3 million ounces in inferred. So very, very sizable at very good grades, over 6 grams per ton globally on the project. But what I find is probably the most striking about this resource and this project is that, these resources sit here in the western part of the district, right off of the highways that we have here. We didn't have to build one road in order to drill this off here. We used man-portable rigs and existing infrastructure, including roads through this area. And, that alone is probably a savings of tens of millions of dollars just to be able to drive off of a road and do this drilling. But I bring that up because, first of all, this project is drastically underexplored. Despite its infrastructure, it's drastically underexplored. This resource sits on less than 10% of the known vein strike in the district. But also it speaks to, utilizing the existing infrastructure as we move forward. So, the majority of these resources, 95+%, sit here in the west, which will be very important for us as we move forward into development. As we go forward, we'll continue to explore, and I could see that there might be other centers of mass throughout this district here, and so we're continuing to explore that in 2024. Our other big target for the year, for first half of the year, is to move forward into a PEA that may be published as soon as mid-year 2024.
Okay, so there's always been this thought that there's a lot more vein here, and obviously there's a couple of the recently mined areas are actually on the center/east side of the project. You mentioned in your webinar this morning that you're talking to 2 or 3 contractors about flying a very large EM survey, which is something I've been looking forward to for a while, because you did some loop here a couple of years ago, and the veins reacted quite well to the EM. You got really good conductors in it. It actually pointed at some new things, and I think that's probably going to be the case if you get to do a broader survey. I got a feeling there's going to be a bunch of veins here that nobody even knows about yet, really. I mean, there's a lot of stuff poking out of the ground, but a lot of this stuff is also, slightly blind. I mean, I think Apollo is largely blind. So I'm quite excited about that.
Exactly, and I skipped forward a few slides here to talk about this, to demonstrate what you're talking about, because you're absolutely right. These are the veins that we know exist or have had workings on them due to basically outcropping historically, or perhaps underground mining where they found something underground historically as they mined other projects or mined to other veins. But with the help of LiDAR, we've been able to fill in a lot of the space compared to when Eric, you and I were first talking about this back in probably 2019. This map looked a lot different. The lines were a bit thicker, and it was a bit of a rough sketch of where we basically the historic information of where these veins were. This has now been far more confirmed with mapping, and you can see these little veins, little kind of occurrences here that have been mapped and sampled. Most likely part of larger structures that we need to connect as well. The EM should help that, and we are excited about that. It's been kind of a bit of an ongoing, I suppose, a bit of a joke for us. It's taken a long time to get it done across the district, but for a good reason. Is we certainly haven't run out of targets. We've kind of always had a list of 100+ top targets that we can always drill. But the EM will help us kind of gather more of that information of the what makes this district tick, and how we can make these new discoveries. And the team that we have, the geologists that are affiliated with this project, and that work with us down there in Mexico, I think are top tier, and really love bringing the combination of practical geology and then scientific advancements to making these discoveries. So I can't wait to see what Jesus and Peter McGaw and the team come up with here.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much target here, and you mentioned a couple, in the release, and I think in the webinar, there's a couple of specific areas you guys are planning to get a drill rig on relatively soon, I believe.
Yeah, they've done a fair bit of mapping down here. It's an area that we like, find it interesting. Brocha de Oro, Nacaral up here, and I do apologize. My annotation skills are pretty rough, but this area up here has always been quite interesting. Aguida Zarca, Cordon de Oro, there's probably something going on there. Animus, of course, the northern end of Animus is the center of historic production, but there's a ton of these cross-cutting main structures that run through there that are, it's always the best place to look, is these intersecting structures. But the funny thing is, of course, you've got Copala, Napoleon, everything over here. You have the town of Copala over here. And then you have this barren area here where no one's really been, and that's an area that we've been working at mapping, but the mapping basically follows these samples that you see here in the areas that don't have that don't have anything. It's not to say that they don't have any veins or anything, they just, no one's been there yet because it's been perhaps the hardest to get to, or there's other lower hanging fruit. So I think that this is a bit of I think there's this will certainly become one of these major districts like San Dimas, which if you look at the San Dimas map, it's very similar, where you just have these clusters here, and that's a prolific producer there up the road from us. One thing I might just go back and touch on is that I think is really interesting is the cutoff of the resource. So we're talking about the exploration, but just to kind of round out the high grade nature of this district. And funny thing is, even La Luisa and some of these other new discoveries that we made all kind of have this same, more or less, a pretty high tenor of grade. Copala, Cristiano both lead the overall structures in grade, and they're very high grade. But there are very high grade areas of structures like La Luisa and Napoleon, et cetera, and certainly Copala and Cristiano and Tajitos. When you crank up the cutoff grade, our resource that we state is at the 150 gram cutoff grade, and that's made with assumptions of metal price and extraction costs of about $100 a ton. And what we see here at 250 gram cutoff is you have very minimal metal loss. I believe it's I think 15% on average between indicated and inferred, but you have a substantial increase in grade. And at 250 here, so you only lose a small amount of your tons, but the grade here, let me get my pointer out. Just about 9 grams gold equivalent, 650 silver equivalent in the indicated category, and then well over half a kilo in inferred, and 7.5 grams in gold equivalent. So that's really what you want to see. In other projects, you may actually lose a huge amount of your contained ounces as you crank the cutoff grade up, which basically is giving you a scenario more similar to actual mining. Here we see that probably the quality of these ounces increase, and the margin probably increases substantially here too. So we're really starting to explore that with the mine planning. How do we prioritize the high value ounces sooner, bring forward the cash flow sooner into the mine plan, and have one of these very quick payback operations with a high MPV.
Yeah, no, it's pretty impressive how little your ounces go down when you crank the grade like that. I mean, even doubling it, you're only taking like 20% of your ounces off, which is, that's a sign of well distributed high grade. It's not a couple of crazy small shoots and then a bunch of low grade between them that's actually taking up most of your tonnage. I mean, that's what you want to see in a resource. It's very robust. Now, one of the things you're gonna be doing is test mining, and is the test mining needed for the PEA, or it's just part of the process overall?
Certainly not. I don't think it's needed for the PEA. Well, it isn't. We basically have what we need for the PEA, but for us, it's kind of goes beyond studies, and it's more about de-risking as much as possible before making big capital decisions, and also just making sure that we're satisfied with our drilling and the work that we've done to create these resource estimates. We also want to do it for ground conditions to understand the geotech, and then really to lay eyes and hands on these veins that we've been spending millions of dollars and many years kind of working on. So it's just the next step in our pathway to building a big producer here. You can see we have this is a plan view. Eventually we'll have a more detailed view, a spatially located, underground scenario here for Copala and Napoleon. So we've done some work like this internally. We have the ability to start using disturbed areas that exist here, including adits and old workings. So we're reviewing that path forward and just understanding where we should go from here, when we can start. But in reality, I think this is something that may start, in the first half of this year, working towards this underground test mining. Now, it's unlikely, I shouldn't say it's unlikely. Our intention isn't to actually run the material for revenue. It's really to just like I said, check the ground conditions, see the vein, reconcile our drilling, these types of things. But what we'll likely do is stockpile the mineralized material at surface, and then have that in the future going forward. If there is a way to monetize some of it, we may look to that. But the reason that we haven't done that exactly yet, or haven't planned on that, is that the local mills in the area, save for San Dimas and others, more established ones a bit further away, have different flow sheets. So they're a little bit different. We want to make sure that we're maybe running our material through a flow sheet that's comparable to ours.
Yeah, so you still need to find that third-party mill, essentially.
Yeah, if we decide to do that, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I would think, 25,000 tons for Napoleon and Copala, depending on how far you got to move this stuff. I actually wouldn't be that shocked if it paid for itself. It's pretty high grade stuff. So, but
Yeah.
I realize that's not the primary reason. You just want to be sure you got the right flow sheet. Um, so what else do you need to do pre-PEAs? Pre-PEA, what's there in terms of necessary steps, or do you pretty much have the data you need now?
We certainly have the metallurgy data that we like there. We've got the resource data. We've done a lot of geotechnical and hydrological work that we need to, and the baseline environmental work. So we're fairly comfortable with this work. It's really about just making sure that for many companies, a PEA is really kind of a marketing document, and or a for sale document kind of thing. Kind of puts that sign up there. For us, it's actually more of a guide to how we're going to move this into production. So we want to do things at a level where we're comfortable, taking that forward and going straight into feasibility, so that we're taking time to do things right. We're making sure that the best consultants we can find are involved. So people that have had experience in similar mines and understand how the rock mechanics work here, and understand how everything will come together, I think is important. So we're not rushing it to just have some kind of crazy numbers that don't hold up. As much as that, I'm sure that be nice to do for some companies and things like that. But what we want to do is make sure that this is a document that, first of all, acts as a guide for what to do, but something that the street and investors have confidence in as well.
No, makes sense. Then there's a couple of good things to point out on this slide too. I mean, I was pretty impressed with the per ounce discovery cost you guys quoted. It's crazy low. I mean, it's a good measure of just how high quality this project is when you're getting great thickness combinations and so many drill holes. I think it was like 30 cents or something like that.
32 cents all in for the life of the project. That includes the option agreement cost too.
Yeah, that's really cheap. And that, it speaks to why you guys keep drilling too. I mean, when you've got that kind of discovery cost, it makes sense to keep cranking up the resource. But I guess at 325 million ounces equivalent, I mean, you're at a scale now where you guys have probably pretty much decided what kind of mining scale is going to make sense for this. I mean, you're not in a position where it's like, oh, we got to add a bunch more ounces before we decide. You got enough ounces now that a variety of scales is going to give you a pretty long mine life. So that's probably not an issue anymore. It's just a matter of tacking on more ounces and maybe more high grade ounces.
Well, if we look at us here, the light blue, the dark blue are, indicated and inferred. In a
Yeah,
previous version of this, we would have stacked these on and, had kind of a comparison like that. This is, I have terrible drawing skills on this program, but you can see that, we're certainly, we exceed the size of Las Chispas, we exceed the size of Juanicipio, of Sounder for Aya. So, the critical mass has arrived, certainly. And then, so we lead the explorer developer category in size. If you look on the left-hand column here, you see that we lead that category in grade as well, substantially by a margin. And, higher grade than Aya, getting closer to that grade that you see at Juanicipio. But you got to remember that these are in production and these have had multiple rounds of drilling and, are reserve status a lot of the case. So, we'll continue to, to drill and grow, the grade and the size, I think will continue to improve as we move forward. And so the critical mass has come, or it has arrived, I should say, and we're wanting to move forward here.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, you're in a position to start doing the PEA.
Yeah.
You can go fairly large tonnage here, and you're still gonna have lots of years left. And I think maybe to finish this off, I think maybe you should give people your woe is me, we're undervalued pitch because it's actually a pretty accurate pitch. It's been a head scratcher for me and you, I know, for quite a while, given
That's
the
why I
quality of the
scratched
resource.
my hair off.
There you go. But
Um,
it's quite dramatic. It's worth, for viewers, it's worth taking a really close look at these slides and understanding understanding how much potential there is for Vizsla to move based on the resource they've got now.
well, it's the woe is me is that, criminally undervalued, I always say is the tagline. And I think it's true because, well, before we put this news out, we were trading well over $1, maybe $1.20 EV per ounce. And as soon
Right.
as that release went out, we automatically lost 30-40% of that EV per ounce value, which doesn't seem very fair for good performance. But, this isn't always an efficient market. But what we see here is that um, even in our comparable group here, on average it's above $1. This line here is $1 EV per ounce. So the price that the market's giving us, enterprise value, divided over the the amount of silver equivalent ounces that we have globally here. So $1.20 is actually the number that we see average here, and we're trading about 80 cents. So there's a big delta there. And what we see when we look at the EV per ounce for comparable producers in Mexico, like Mag and Las Chispas, that's about $5.50. So naturally, there's a 6 times re-rating on the ounces that we have currently. So it's not hard to see that as we continue to de-risk, even if make a new discovery, of course, that adds these ounces, that makes us even more undervalued. At a certain point here, we're catching up, we're moving forward, and we're exceeding some of our comps and moving towards that $5+ EV per ounce as we de-risk. I've seen this here as we move from the left-hand side of this chart below here to the right hand. We continue to move to the right, but there's nothing really like Vizsla out there in the sense that you have Mag Silver, which is a 44% owned, they partnered with Fresnillo. It's a great company. It's very well run, extremely high grade, a wonderful project. But of course, they don't have 100% ownership of the project, and we have access to our whole district. We can go explore anywhere we want and do catalyst rich exploration and work. Silvercrest, another extremely well run company. What a success they've had with discovery moving into production. Something that we absolutely want to emulate. But it's a smaller project. We can fit 7 Silvercrests in our district. Where our ounce count already, is far ahead of what Silvercrest has ever had before they went into production. So we have this kind of combination of scale, grade, and size that sets us apart. And I believe as we continue to not only de-risk, but to explore still, we'll move to the right-hand side of this chart and be, one of the, actually probably, it's quite possible that we may become one of the world's largest single asset silver primary producers.
Yeah, you seem to have room for that. And the top chart too, I'm going to point out for people that those dots on the top chart, that's the measured and indicated grade. And the undervaluation to me is particularly egregious when you look at that, because really, grade is margin is profits. Higher grade, higher margin ounces, to my mind, should get higher per ounce valuation. And indeed, it's always been the argument. I mean, I've followed Silvercrest from the day it listed. I'm pretty good friends with Eric. Part of the reason why I always thought that was able to get and maintain higher values, which it did, was grade, and grade. It's all about margin. And yeah, okay, so Panuco isn't quite where Juanicipio and Las Chispas are, but it's quite a bit above the other competitors. Plus, you got to keep in mind it's bigger. It's it's 325 million ounces, and I'll be shocked if they don't get through 500,000 before they're in production, 500 million before they're in production. So you got to take that into account too. So I definitely second Mike's argument and unhappiness at the at the relative valuation.
And
Maybe
well,
yeah, go ahead.
one comment on that, of course, is grade is important, but if you think about mining dilution, that's another aspect to profitability as well. And
Yeah.
one of the things that the PEA is going to give us the ability to talk about, I think, is more about that mining dilution and how important it is that we have 10-meter thick. Well, we have Copala, which on average is 10 meters thick across the wireframes. The average vein in Mexico, if you're lucky producing underground, you're maybe doing 200 grams per ton silver equivalent over 2 meters. Most of our structures are much bigger than 2 meters. Most of them are 4 meters if they're not Copala, and if it's Copala, it's 10, which is just incredible to have grades like 500 grams plus over 10 meters. That's another reason why we're in a bit of a different league as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a very nice looking set of veins. Now, the other thing that you brought up, you sort of mentioned in your 2024 outlook, and then I saw you talk about it again in your webinar this morning, is a royalty. Now, I mean, I think you and I both had some experience with the Great Bear royalty. That was a very smart move on their part. It was valuable, extremely valuable at the end of the day. And I think it had the not inconsiderable advantage for Great Bear management at the time, that it basically kept shareholders on side, because everybody knew that royalty was floating around out there, and that at some point they were going to get their pro rata number of Great Bear royalty shares. And it sounds to me like you guys are thinking along very similar lines for Vizsla.
Yeah, exactly. We feel like there's it's a 2% royalty that we'd like to have on the property here. We're contemplating exactly how to do this right now, but we feel that certainly it's already part of the company. The value's in the company already, but a royalty would never really get that full value of the entire billion-ounce potential district here, unless it's in the hands of the shareholders and Vizsla as shareholders as well. in a standalone public company. I think that would be a way to maximize the value of, blue sky potential for shareholders for a long period of time. I should say it's not that there's an imminent takeover or something like that we're doing that, but it is a prudent way to protect shareholders' interest in the case that may happen. And as you see, look at these bar charts and read Eric, your work and others, you can kind of see why this might become very interesting to
Yeah.
a producing mining company at a certain period of time. Of course, I'm not saying that's imminent or anything, but I think it's important in this business to learn from your peers' success and emulating groups like Mag Silver and Silvercrest and Great Bear. I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, for
No.
shareholders. And so we took notes, we watched that, participated in Chris and John's success there with Great Bear, and Callum's success with Great Bear. And I think it's pretty clear that there's an opportunity to crystallize a lot of value for shareholders with this royalty.
Well, and the truth of the matter is, if you've got a tier one project, and you obviously do, one of several advantages, many advantages of having a tier one project is you can do things like creating a 2% royalty and spinning it out. If you had a marginal project, and you did that, or created a 2% or larger royalty and put it to the side before you sent out the calling cards to the mid sizes and the majors, I think most of them would not respond very well to that, and they'd probably respond quite badly. But the simple truth of the matter is, if you've got a project everybody wants, and that's sort of what Great Bear had with Dixie, you can do those kind of maneuvers and still make the sale. And I think Panuco has similar kind of quality where 2% royalty may not have a potential acquirer dancing in the streets. They're not going to be super thrilled about it, but it's like, oh well, cost of doing business.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
Okay, I mean, I think that covers pretty much everything for today. I mean, again, great resource update, big growth in ounces, big growth in grade of the indicated ounces. I mean, this chart tells you everything you need to know. I think there's lots of room for a re-rate here. I'm not a silver bug personally, but I'm well aware of the fact that if gold has the kind of move I'm hoping it does, silver probably goes with it. And with 325 million ounces, Vizsla's got huge leverage. I would expect substantial moves on higher silver prices for this stock. And one thing I've always really liked about it, really the same as Silvercrest. I love the fact you've got those high gold grades too, because gold, you tend to get more valuation for at the end of the day, and it tends to be less troublesome metallurgically. And there's a lot of things to like about it. So, I mean, I think Vizsla's got, it's got everything. Great project, great management, fantastic resource now that's going to keep growing. This year, we're going to see the economics unveiled, and I expect those economics are going to be pretty impressive. So, if you don't own this, or you're not watching it, you should definitely be watching it. You should probably be owning, quite frankly. I mean, I certainly do. So Vizsla Silver, VZLA on the venture, VZLA NYSE Amex. Thanks, Mike Konnert, for giving us a walkthrough on the new resource, and good luck going forward, man.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Great to see you.